Welcome back, and more importantly, congratulations. You survived last week, which means you successfully navigated at least 3 unnecessary meetings, 2 confusing text conversations, 1 moment where you opened the fridge, stared into it like it held the answers to life, and absolutely did not find them. But you made it. It's Monday, a brand new week, fresh start, clean slate, black gold, Texas tea. Same chaos, just rebranded. And instead of diving straight into it unprepared, you did the smart thing. You showed up here. On a personal note, looking back at this past week seemed to have a common theme for me. Not just in solitary thoughts, but weaving itself through conversations I've had with a few people that are completely unconnected. I found it intriguing, and I wanted to share with you what I discovered. You know, the more you look at history, the more it starts to feel like a mirror. Because when you're younger, everything feels so immediate, so intense. You think every decision is make or break. Every mistake is permanent. Every bad moment is going to define your life forever. But then you step back. You look at the bigger picture, and you realize people in history didn't know either. They didn't know which moments would matter. They didn't know which decisions would echo for generations. They were just living and trying, just figuring it out as they went, just like we are. And as you get older, you start to understand something powerful. Most things pass. The stress, the fear, the uncertainty. It fades. But the things that truly matter, the people, the love, the moments you fight for, those are the things that stay. So if life feels overwhelming right now, take a breath. You're not behind. You're not stuck. You're just in the middle of your story. And history proves that the middle is where everything starts to change. I hope that spoke to some of you, because I'd like to believe that when the universe sends us a message that we actually pick up on, it's not just for one person, but for humanity to learn from. All right, let's get back into it. Everything we're covering today happened this past week, March 23rd through March 29th. And this week, it delivered. We've got a speech that changed the direction of the Cold War. We got a fire that exposed the costs of industrial neglect. A medical breakthrough that saved millions of lives. And a moment in music history that still gets played at weddings, whether you like it or not. Plus, a few birthdays this week that prove greatness really does show up on the calendar. And of course, another entry into what the hell, people. Because no matter how far we come as a species, someone is always out there making decisions that future historians are going to study and judge. So take a breath, reset your brain. Let's get into it. This is Draven's Den. On March 23rd, 1775, Patrick Henry delivered his famous "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech to the Second Virginia Convention at St. John's Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia. His primary goal was to persuade the delegates to arm the Virginia militia in preparation for what he saw as an inevitable war with Great Britain. The convention met at St. John's Church in Richmond to avoid interference from the royal governor, Lord Dunmore, who was based in Williamsburg. Henry introduced a proposal to organize a volunteer company of cavalry or infantry in every Virginia county to defend the colony. Future U.S. Presidents George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were present in the pews during the address. The resolution passed by a narrow margin, reportedly 65 to 60. Officially shifting Virginia's stance towards military readiness just weeks before the first shots of the Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord. Henry spoke without a prepared script. and no contemporary transcription exists. The version known today was reconstructed in 1817, 42 years later, by biographer William Wirt, based on the recollections of witnesses like Thomas Jefferson and St. George Tucker. Some historians debate the exact wording, suggesting Wirt may have embellished or even invented parts of the iconic closing lines just to enhance his biography. Subtle, not dramatic at all. The speech helped push the American colonies closer to revolution against Britain. Because sometimes history doesn't whisper. Sometimes it walks into the room and yells. Also on March 23rd, 1919, Benito Mussolini, yeah, I get to practice my Italian here, founded the Facci Italiani de Combattimento. You like that? Well, all of that meant Italian Faces of Combat. The organization was established during a rally at Piazza San Sepolcro in Milan, Italy. The initial group included approximately 200 supporters, including World War I veterans, former socialists, and futurists. This paramilitary movement served as the precursor to the National Fascist Party, into which it was reorganized in November of 1921. Sorry about that. This Dr. Pepper is killing me. It focused on revolutionary nationalism, opposing both traditional right and the socialist left, while advocating for Italian expansion and unity. The movement became known for its paramilitary wing, the Squadristi, or black shirts, who used violence and intimidation against political opponents, particularly socialists. Now, a reminder that ideas, even dangerous ones, well, they start somewhere. And lastly, Elvis Presley recorded his timeless classic, Can't Help Falling in Love, on March 23, 1961, at Radio Recorders in Hollywood. The song was part of the soundtrack for his film Blue Hawaii. Recorded on the final day of a 3-day soundtrack session, which was March 21st through the 23rd, Elvis famously required 29 takes to perfect the vocals. And we tried to do it in 3 minutes on a karaoke stage. The melody was adapted from the 18th century French love song, Plaisir d'amore. I like that. Composed by Jean-Paul Egide Martini. Martini. Yeah, it's actually a name, not just a drink. A 2020 survey identified it as the most popular choice for a couple's first dance at wedding receptions. Beyond its 1961 release, it became Elvis's traditional concert closer from 1969 until his final performance in 1977. Now, March 24th, 1989. Do you remember what you were doing? I kind of do. The oil tanker Exxon Valdez ran aground on Bligh Reef in Alaska's Prince William Sound, causing one of the most devastating environmental disasters in U.S. history. Approximately 11 million gallons, around 260,000 barrels, of crude oil leaked into the pristine Alaskan waters. The vessel hit the reef shortly after midnight after altering its course to avoid floating ice. Yeah, it was like, I do not want to be the Titanic. Well, yeah. Investigators found that the captain, Joseph Hazelwood, had been drinking before departure and had left an uncertified officer in charge of the bridge at the time of the collision. Isn't that kind of the same thing that happened with the Titanic? The captain went to catch some Z's and he left some dude up there just bebopping around. Yeah. The spill eventually contaminated over 1,300 miles of coastline. It killed an estimated, get this, 250,000 seabirds, 2,800 sea otters, 300 harbor seals, 22 killer whales. The disaster severely impacted local salmon and herring fisheries, leading to bankruptcies and long-term economic decline in shoreline towns like Valdez and Cordova. More than 11,000 workers participated in the cleanup, which cost Exxon approximately $2 billion. Yeah. Methods included skimming, chemical dispersants, and high-pressure hot water washings. Through some methods, like the hot water, were later found to have caused additional ecological damage. Now, I remember the Dawn, I think it was Dawn, the dish soap commercials. They were piggybacking off of this oil spill. You know, you can wash your duck with Dawn. Something like that. In direct response, the U.S. Congress passed the Oil Pollution Act in 1990, which mandated double hulls for all new tankers in U.S. waters and established stricter liability and response procedures. As of this year, while many species have recovered, lingering oil remains buried in some Alaskan beaches, and the total herring population still has never fully rebounded. It devastated wildlife, destroyed ecosystems, and forced a global conversation about environmental responsibility. Because sometimes it takes disaster for people to start realizing that our luxuries come with more than monetary costs. Now, March 25th, 1911. The Shirtwaist Company fire occurred on Saturday, March 25th, 1911, in New York City, and remains one of the deadliest industrial disasters in U.S. history. And this is sad, people. It really is. The fire broke out on the top floors of the Ash Building in Manhattan, killing 146 garment workers, mostly young Italian and Jewish immigrant women. The tragedy is historically significant for exposing horrific sweatshop conditions and catalyzing major reforms in workplace safety and labor laws. The fire spread through the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the Ash Building, now known as the Brown Building. It likely started in a scrap bin on the 8th floor, possibly from someone tossing a cigarette or a match. Victims were unable to escape because the exit doors were locked by management, a common practice at the time to prevent theft and unauthorized breaks. Yeah, the doors were locked. But it gets better. The building's only fire escape collapsed under the weight of fleeing workers, and the fire department's ladders could only reach the 6th or 7th floor. Many of the workers jumped from high windows to their deaths in front of horrified bystanders. Factory owners Max Blanc, and Isaac Harris were tried for manslaughter, but acquitted because the prosecution could not prove they knew the doors were locked at the time of the fire. They literally set the policy to lock the doors. Think about that. And they couldn't prove? Nah. There's money changing hands somewhere. Sorry, I'm skeptical of rich people. Sorry, rich people. You make me nervous. All right, well, the disaster galvanized the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, the ILGWU, leading to a massive increase in union membership and activism. The New York State Legislature created the Factory Investigating Commission. Their findings led to over 30 new laws mandating automatic sprinkler systems, mandatory fire drills and fireproofing, requirement for outward opening unlocked exit doors. You know what? Okay, I get it. They didn't think they needed outward opening doors, but locking them? Good grief. Improved sanitation and limited working hours for women and children. Yeah, your great-great-granny? Yeah, may have worked in that building. Hopefully she survived. So many reformers involved in the aftermath, such as Francis Perkins, later brought these safety standards to the federal level as part of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. Perkins eventually became the first female U.S. Secretary of Labor. A permanent memorial featuring the names of the victims was officially unveiled at the site of the fire on October 11th, 2023. Hey, if any of you guys ever go there, snap a picture of that memorial. I'd love to see it. 146 workers died, many of them young immigrant women. Locked doors, unsafe conditions, no way out. The tragedy led to major labor reforms and workplace safety laws. History doesn't just remember progress, it remembers the cost of getting there. Personally, I hope that karma retried Mr. Max Planck and Isaac Harris and found them guilty. March 26, 1953. Dr. Jonas Salk announced the development of the first effective polio vaccine. That announcement was a massive turning point in medical history. By 1955, the vaccine was approved for widespread use, and it eventually helped virtually eliminate polio in most of the world. Before Dr. Salk's breakthrough, the disease paralyzed thousands of children every year, making it one of the most feared illnesses of the era. Interestingly, man, that's a tongue twister if you're not really paying attention. Salk famously chose not to patent the vaccine. I like this, really, I do. At a time when polio terrified families across the world, this changed everything. And when asked who owned the patent, Salk famously said, "Could you patent the sun?" Man, I love that. I love that. He's absolutely right. Hey, Big Pharma, pay attention. But that's how you know someone understood the assignment. The Tenerife airport disaster remains the deadliest accident in aviation history, resulting in 583 fatalities. On March 27, 1977, two Boeing 747s, KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, collided on the fog-shrouded runway of Los Rodeos Airport, now Tenerife North Airport, in the Canary Islands. Both aircraft were originally headed for Gran Canaria Airport, but were diverted to the much smaller Tenerife Airport due to a terrorist bombing at the intended destination. They could not win for losing. The KLM 747 began its takeoff roll without clear authorization from air traffic control, while the Pan Am 747 was still taxiing on the same runway. Heavy, drifting fog reduced visibility to less than 100 meters, preventing the crews and the control tower from seeing each other. Fatalities and survivors. Yeah, KLM Flight 4805. All 248 people on board perished. Pan Am Flight 1736, 335 people died, while 61 survived, including the cockpit crew, by escaping through a torn fuselage. Investigations by Spanish and Dutch authorities identified a chain of errors, obviously, rather than a single cause. The KLM captain, Jacob Velhuizen van Zaten, I practiced that one a few times, attempted takeoff without explicit clearance. The guy was trying to take off without getting the definite, okay, go ahead, dude. Yeah. A critical misunderstanding occurred due to non-standard radio phraseology, and radio interference, a heterodyne that blocked a vital warning from the Pan Am crew. The KLM crew was facing strict Dutch duty regulations, which influenced their decision to refuel in Tenerife to save time later, making the plane heavier and more flammable. This tragedy fundamentally transformed global aviation safety protocols, and it led to the word takeoff is now strictly reserved for actual takeoff clearances. New training emphasized teamwork and empowered junior crew members to challenge a captain's decisions. English was re-emphasized as the mandatory work language for international aviation. Yeah. Do they have to press 1 for English? I don't know. The tragic combination of miscommunication, fog, and human error. Sometimes history isn't about intention. It's about consequences. Wow. I mean, it really sucks that so many of our greatest accomplishments, are standing over these people that perished. Sucks they lost their lives, man. I grieve for their families. On March 28th, 1979. A partial nuclear meltdown occurred at the 3 Mile Island Power Plant in Pennsylvania. It remains the most significant accident in U.S. commercial nuclear power plant history. The incident began at 4 a.m. when a mechanical or electrical failure prevented the main feed water pumps from sending water to the steam generators. This led to a series of events, which including a stuck open relief valve, which caused the reactor core to partially melt, while the accident resulted in the permanent closure of the Unit 2 reactor. It led to sweeping changes in emergency response planning, reactor operator training, and federal radiation protection regulations. No immediate deaths were reported, but it sparked a widespread fear and changed how the public viewed nuclear energy. Trust, once shaken, is hard to rebuild. On March 29, 1974, a group of local farmers accidentally discovered the Terracotta Army while digging a water well during a severe drought. The discovery occurred near, Jiayang village in the Lingtong district, about 1.5 kilometers east of the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Now, I'm pretty sure I butchered all that. I might have gotten Lintong right, but anyway. You guys can look up the Terracotta Warriors. Warriors. Yay. Hey, go check out the Warriors, all right? All right. The group included Yang Zifa, his 5 brothers, Yang Wenhai, Yang Yanzin, Yang Quanyai, Yang Payan, and Yang Zenman. I think I got that right. I probably didn't have to do it with the accent, but yeah. Oh, and his neighbor was there, Wang Puzhai. So you got hi, I'm Wang. These are my friends, Yang, Quan, Yang, and Yang. Okay. While digging, Yang Zifa's hoe struck. Sorry. Yang Zifa's hoe struck a life-size terracotta head and bronze arrowheads. Initially, the farmers were concerned that they had disturbed a pottery god or an old kiln. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'd have been a little more concerned if I smacked a god in the head with a shovel. But, hey, what do I know? Although the farmers physically unearthed the first pieces, archaeologist Zhao Kangmin is often credited. Why do I feel like I need to have an Asian accent when I'm saying these names? All right, Zhao Kangmin. All right, okay. Yang Wenhai. I don't know. I don't know why I feel like I need to have an Asian accent. I'm sorry. I love Asians. You're great. You're awesome. But I don't mean to mock you. I really don't. It's not my intention. I love all you guys. Okay. So, Zhao Kangmin is often credited with recognizing their true historical significance. He identified them as relics from the Qin dynasty and began the first restoration efforts. The army was created over 2,000 years ago as funerary art to protect Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Huang. I'm never going to get this. In the afterlife. Okay, so funerary art to protect an emperor. Art? Really? I thought it was more like, I remember hearing one theory that he used magical powers to turn all of his soldiers into terracotta, so that his entire army in terracotta, so that they could all go to the afterlife with him. I don't know. I think I was on Scooby-Doo or something. But anyway, one of you guys might know what I'm talking about. The site is estimated to contain more than 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, and 670 horses. Every figure is unique, featuring distinct facial characteristics, hairstyles, and armor that indicated their specific military rank. Often referred to as the eighth wonder of the world, the site was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. I've actually seen these guys on tour in Richmond. They brought like maybe 5, 10, something like that. Um, yeah, I mean, they're amazing. They're really amazing. But following the discovery, the farmers' lives changed significantly for years. Yang Zifa worked at the Terracotta Army Museum signing books for visitors. Thousands of life size clay soldiers buried with China's first emperor, hidden underground for over 2,000 years. Just waiting. History doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just waits to be found. But to expand on the story a little bit, people just won't leave these terracotta guys alone. On May 30th, 2025, well, last year, a 30-year-old domestic tourist jumped into a protected pit at the Museum of the Terracotta Army in Xi'an, China, damaging two of the 2,000-year-old clay figures. The man, identified by the surname Sun, S-U-N, climbed over a guardrail and protective netting before jumping approximately 18 feet into pit number 3. He jumped 18 feet. Once he was inside, he pushed and pulled. He started a fight with the clay soldier. Pushed and pulled the ancient statues, causing them to be damaged in varying degrees. He started a fight with the soldier. Local authorities stated the man suffers from mental illness. Maybe? Yeah, could be. All right. History of similar vandalism. Oh yeah, this isn't just a one-off. No. This is not the first time these UNESCO World Heritage artifacts have been targeted. 2017, Philadelphia. During a special exhibition at the Franklin Institute, a visitor named Michael Rahana broke off and stole a thumb from a statue. I remember this news story. After a lengthy legal battle, including a mistrial, he was sentenced to 5 years of probation in 2023. But wait, there's more. 2006. A German student dressed up as a terracotta warrior, there I am again, warrior, and jumped into the pit to pose with the statues, though he did not cause any damage. Okay, Madonna, strike a pose. All right. Restoration efforts for the statues damaged in the 2025 incident are expected to be complex, as each warrior is a unique piece of funeral art. I still don't get that. Why is it funeral art to protect the emperor? Man, I don't know. Okay, we got some famous birthdays this past week. March 26, Robert Frost, one of America's greatest poets. Proof that sometimes the quietest voices carry the deepest meaning. March 27th, one of my favorites, Quentin Tarantino, just because he's batshit crazy. A filmmaker who looked at storytelling and said, what if we just did all this differently? And somehow he made it work. Remember the rumor going around not too long ago? He wanted to remake a Star Trek movie. Can you imagine what he would do to Star Trek? I mean, look at Pulp Fiction and look at think what he would do with Star Trek. I don't even want to prophesize or assume or whatever the word is. You know what I mean. Dang it. All right, and March 28th, Lady Gaga, the artist who redefined pop music, identity, and performance. A reminder that originality still matters. She wasn't only a music artist, she did some acting in American Horror Story. Very, very odd duck. Very interesting. I think she was Madonna Part 2. All right. Now, time once again, drum roll please, to check in on humanity. This week's entry, a group of individuals attempted to follow GPS directions directly into a body of water. And instead of questioning it, they committed fully. At some point, you gotta ask, when did we stop trusting our own eyes? The GPS said, left turn, Clyde, but your brain should have said, that's a lake. Yeah. And there's more than one. Hawaii, May 23. 2 tourists in a Dodge Caravan drove into a small boat harbor while attempting to find a manta ray snorkel tour. Witnesses reported the car driving down a boat ramp and into the water while the passengers appeared to be waiting for the car to stop, taking a wrong turn onto the ramp. Wait a minute. And while the passengers appeared to be waiting for the car to stop. Okay. South Carolina. All right, home of the Carolina Squat. A couple in their 60s visiting Isle of Palms drove their SUV into a marina after the GPS confused them, steering down a boat ramp into the water. Washington State, 2019. Three tourists in Bellevue drove their vehicle down a boat launch into a lake at night while trying to find their hotel. Oh, honey, you brought me to an underwater hotel. You could have gone to Jared. Yeah, hell, I don't know. All right, Australia, 2012. Three Japanese tourists in Australia drove into Moreton Bay, intending to drive to North Stradbroke Island, but were directed into tidal water instead of a ferry route. Technology is helpful, it really is, but it's not a replacement for common sense, people. But yet, here we are. History isn't just global, it's personal. If your family has a story, military service, immigration, resilience, or even something small that shaped your path, I want to know about it. The world wants to know about it. This is how we keep the stories alive. The Family Thread series exists to preserve those stories before they're gone. Because history isn't just what we read, it's what we remember. So send those stories to me at dravensden@gmail.com. And I'll either bring you on the show, we can do a pre-recorded Zoom conversation, or we can even, we can try to go live, I guess. But, a lot of people don't like to go live. We can do an interview. We can talk about your great-grandpappy or your grandpappy or your grandmammy or your gaga, gee, whatever you call them. And the stories and how they changed your family or changed the world or changed the bread guy down the street. I think all these stories are important. So come on, send them to me. And now, time to close out the hour. March 23rd through March 29th reminds us that history is built on moments, speeches that ignite revolutions, tragedies that force change, discoveries that reshape what we know, and decisions that ripple further than anyone expects. History is not just the past, it's a pattern. And if you look closely enough, you start to see it repeating. I'm Stan Miles, and that's the rest of history. Stay curious.